I got here a little over 4 years ago, and my question is going to be for Dr. Frist. And if we do another round, if you're going to have additional questions, I'll have a few more. A couple things. We share a lot in common other than being close in age. Uh, you Did you term limit yourself to this place to do it no more than 2 terms?
I did. I did. I came in saying 12 years was about
Alla-
the right amount of time.
Hallelujah. This place needs that more than ever. I wanted to be what you were out of the gate, a doctor, and I chose to be an entrepreneur. And I think I made the right decision there, by the way. But when I decided to come here, it was out of concern for the broad array of issues. And started the Climate Caucus with Senator Coons after he tried to get every Republican to even think about it. And he told me for 2 years it didn't get anywhere. He almost turned away, thinking the perfunctory answer was going to be, no, I'm not interested. I said, sure, I would. So for those out there that wonder about this discussion and where conservatives fit in, I can tell you that young conservatives are very, very interested. Faith-based organizations from evangelicals to Catholics are, and probably the business that's most at the forefront that knows something is afoot would be farmers. And I got involved in farming, both tree and row crop, many, many years ago. So I'm a personal member and a corporate member, my company is, that I used to run, of the Nature Conservancy. I think you probably hit the sweet spot of practicality when it comes to how we need to look at it. You didn't have the inherent budget issues. Back, I think it was 2000 when we started putting everything on the credit card here. You were here for a couple years. I'll cite that we were $5 trillion in debt in 2000. After the Bush term, 2 terms, we went up to 10 trillion. I think the other side of the aisle said, if you're going to do that, we're going to double down. Had an issue with the economy. Well, they added another 6 trillion. Structural $1 trillion deficits. Since then, now they're up to $2 trillion deficits. I love to quote on another issue that I think drives the dysfunction here. Admiral Mike Mullen said, I fear the red ink more than I do the red menace. And the sad interplay to how we've gotten here would be defense hawks in the other side of the aisle that have just put the budget process, everything that works everywhere else, secondary to what they think is most important policy-wise. I see where you think climate is the single biggest health threat facing humanity. I'm going to say that I think climate is something that we need to be engaged in so we don't get walloped with bad policy and that we don't ignore an issue out that is important. How do you kind of put the weight between both issues when one's a bird in the hand going broke systematically to the tune of $2 trillion a year, and that is not a finance is what I ended up doing as an entrepreneur, terrible business plan for anyone. Where do you think the imminent threat of climate compares when it's modeled in a way that it is hard to see what that might be? I know it's of significance. How does that play against the systematic going broke as a country?
You know, first of all, as you can tell, I'm neither the alarmist or the conservation that says we don't care about people, we're conserving just for conserving sake. And that's why the Nature Conservancy, as you have said, basically says it's about planetary health and human health. And the human health can't be sustained if we don't get the planetary health right. And these long statistics over 500 years are really interesting, but from a scientist standpoint, we live in a different world now. We're in an industrial world. We know we're putting carbon in the air. We know it's wrapping a blanket around. The interesting thing about this committee, we used to budget before most of your time here in 5 years. And this isn't a 5-year issue, nor was HIV/AIDS, which we're in the 20th year of celebration, really, the success. It's a 30, it's a 40, it's a 50-year history. Then we budget a 10-year period, which is what you're challenged to do now. And it is true, this is going to take longer than 10 years. It took longer than 10 years to get here. It's going to be innovation. It's going to be science. It's going to be something that's in my testimony, but I didn't have time for you to hear, the nature-based solutions, which don't cost a lot of money, that are easy to do, that promote biodiversity, that from the emission standpoint can probably take care of 15% of the emissions by just sustainable foresting. I didn't mean close the forest down, but we need to manage them. I mean, we don't need to cut them all down because that creates disease itself. So this is a long-term problem that's going to require not a point solution, not a carbon tax, and not a loan, and not a all of the wind or the solar.
And I agree with all that. That question, though, was a relative significance in terms of imminence, the red ink or the climate concerns.
Yeah, I think both are important. And to say it's an either or, it's a little bit about saying you're an alarmist or you're not an alarmist. It is absolutely both. If we don't start investing now, the payout will be beyond our 10-year window in terms of the cost to humanity for the climate.
And
I agree.
We
right now,
we are out of time. I think we'll have another round. Before I do let you go quickly, do you formally endorse federal term limits?
I would probably not, only because real quickly, even as Majority Leader of the United States Senate coming here, I would occasionally, and probably more than occasionally, rely on somebody a little bit older with a little more experience, and therefore I cannot, in good conscience, in this body, the upper legislative body, basically say that everybody should be term limited. It was the right thing for me. It was the right thing, I think, maybe for most people, because the turnover is good, but I stopped short of endorsing federal limits for everybody, or term limits for every federal official.
Senator Lujan.